And we are recording. All right. This is the third of what I hope will be many more interviews with 2021 Grand Lodge candidates. And today we have somebody I have had the pleasure of seeing on at a few different Masonic events over the years, Brother Rick Cadotte. Thank you so much for being here. Or Richard Cadotte. I should have asked before. Do you prefer Rick or Richard?
Rick's fine. That's what I go by.
Um, I will go.
See you again, Cameron.
Good to see you too. I'll go through the standard standard caveats at the start, which if you've tuned into the last two episodes, you'll know by now. This is there is an open invitation to all Grand Lodge candidates. If for whatever reason I haven't managed to get in touch with you, my email is on the bottom of the screen. Just look down and shoot me off an email and I will make sure to respond. I speak, this podcast speaks for itself. We don't represent Grand Lodge of Canada, Windsor Masonic Temple, or anything like that. And obviously, these interviews aren't meant as endorsements, but they are a chance for Freemasons in Ontario, and for that matter, nationally, internationally, to get to know our 2021 candidates. And in the comments or in the description, you will find more information about Brother Cadotte, as well as information about voting in Grand Lodge this year, because it is a little bit different. Isn't that right, Brother Cadotte?
Yes, it is. We're treading uncharted territory.
Well, that's it. That's an interesting topic to get into, uncharted territory. The last year and a half, gosh, however long it's been since COVID started, it really does feel like uncharted territory in so many different ways, whether it be in people's work lives, families, medical. We're all kind of treading these waters together. And then add on to that, it's uncharted territory for Freemasonry.
Absolutely. At least 100 years worth.
That's a good point. We went through it before, but even then, there are some older Masons, but there are none that I know who went through 1918, or at least were Masons in 1918. So I guess from your perspective, both as a Mason and as a candidate, how do you feel both we Freemasons have done going through these uncharted waters, and also what do you see for the future of the craft? Because I got my vaccination. Everybody should get vaccinated, but obviously, even with vaccinations, it's still a process to get us back to where we were before and reopened fully.
Right. Now, if you ever gone back or the proceedings to Grand Lodge back in the 1918 and 1919, you have the DDs of various districts. They make a comment or two about the pandemic back in the Spanish flu. And they don't have a lot of information, but they touch on the fact the lodges were closed and, it was uncharted for them as well. So and then if you go and read the concurrent ones, or the ones that come out afterwards, they actually came back rather strong. And again, at that time, you have Brother coming back to the wartime. So I think it's going to be frustrating. It's going to be an adjustment. People are going to be probably a little reluctant, a little bit scared coming into this. But I think we're going to push through. I mean, Masonry's been through much worse. I mean, we've gone through wars where we've been shut down for years, and we've survived. So I don't see a reason why we're not going to survive this at all. It might be a little short attendance at the beginning until people, again, get their comfort levels up. And I think we're going to push through this just fine.
So moving from uncharted territory or uncharted waters to more chartered waters, talk to us a bit about yourself, starting with how it is you came to be part of this series, what you are running for, your candidacy, and kind of your purpose for having your name forward or for standing for the position.
I've been involved with Grand Lodge probably, well, for the last 11 years on a more of an less than official stat area. And I've been involved through the College of Freemasonry. So when I was still senior deacon in my lodge, I took the course. I was very, very impressed by it. Obviously, I caught someone's attention and they asked me to become a mentor myself when I was completing my studies. That mentoring really opened my eyes to other brethren out there. I get an idea of that, some things exist outside of St. Thomas District where I was initiated at. There's other areas that masonry being our backbone, but people see it differently. They experience it differently. They get a different take on it. And it really opens your eyes. Some people don't look beyond their own lodge, some don't look beyond their own district. But if you do, it's a whole different world. See things that you can bring back to your lodge, or you may see something that you practice in your lodge and offer to them, and they'll take and run with it. So it's a great exchange of information out there. So I, basically, through my time of being at the college, communicating with these people, I'm I want to do more, and that's exactly what I'm hoping for. I'm not afraid to make contact with the brethren out there. I don't do this strictly through email. I'll pick up the phone and call a brother who's struggling. There's the odd um, question out there where you can do a quick yes or no, or look at the Constitution on this page, that type of thing. But you get a real sense for who's having the struggles in their studies. I just pick up the phone, call the brother. We have a great 5 or 35-minute conversation, and he's on his way. So I really enjoy those conversations, and hopefully I can do more for the brethren.
That you bring up something that has been brought up consistently throughout my podcast, but also even recently with these Grand Lodge candidate interviews, the value and importance of traveling and of visitation in a Mason's career. I mean, my advice to a new Mason is always, as much as you can, visit and travel, whether it be outside of your district or even to another lodge within your district. The more you travel and visit with other brethren, the more full and the better a Mason you will be. And I think you touched on that. And I think that's very true.
Yeah. So the building where my mother lodges, I know this is through the jurisdiction, 3 lodges meeting there. So yes, same place, same lodge room, but the 3 lodges have 3 distinct personalities, and they all have their own appeal. I'm a member of 3 different lodges in 3 different districts. They all cater to a different style, if you will, a different personality. I love them both. I love them all 3 of them. I wouldn't trade them for anything. That's my personal choice.
As somebody who's running for Grand Lodge, but even as a Mason, and this is something that I've been thinking a lot about, kind of the role of Freemasonry in 2021. I wonder, it's not shocking to anybody to say that there's more than a few problems in the world that are discussed pretty regularly on the news. And it seems as though Freemasonry is one of very few organizations that has a philosophy and, if practiced well, has the ability to really influence the world in a positive way. I guess my question is, what do you feel about the role of Freemasonry in 2021? Do you think that Freemasons are doing enough to influence the world in a positive way? Could we be doing more? Being more active in the communities, things like that? I guess, or should we be tending to our own house as opposed to kind of engage in advocacy or things like that, whether it be advocacy about vaccines or whatever it may be, encouraging people to get them, things like that.
I think Masons right now, I think what we're doing, we're definitely on the right track. Um, Maybe if more people knew about us in the way that we would like to be perceived, Masonry rolls with the punches. That's why we've survived for 304 years. We adjust to what's going on around us. In some cases, we may think, Masons, they hate change. Yeah, that's a rumor. We've all seen that in our individual lodges in our districts. But do we really hate change? Why have we survived so long? It wasn't by being stagnant. It wasn't by saying no all the time. We've said yes a number of times. So I really think leading by example. And I also think Masonry attracts men who are on the same mindset as we are. So are we going to see an onslaught of thousands of men? I don't know. But I think the ones that we do attract, I think they're going to be quality men. And I think as long as we're there, that's what we're going to attract.
So that's an interesting. There's a lot of interesting things in that answer. The idea of who we're attracting, I think, is a very there's a whole that you can go on for hours on that topic, because I mean Grand Lodge itself, right, has talked about, not only in our jurisdiction but I know other Grand Lodges, about the importance of, quote unquote, guarding the West Gate, meaning,
Mhm.
being cautious about membership and making sure that when an applicant comes to the lodge, the process isn't just rushed through, but that he's given a chance to meet the brethren and given a chance to learn more about the craft and the lodge, so he can make a decision for him and his family as to whether it's right for him to join, as opposed
Mhm.
to just pushing through kind of thing. And I guess how
Right.
important do you think that is, the idea of, it's one thing to attract somebody interest, but then making sure that, you talk to them about why they're interested in Freemasonry, what to expect, and making sure that they understand what the craft is before they put the time and effort into joining.
Hmm. No, definitely. They need to be informed what we really are about. Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure they're joining for the right reasons. They're not looking for the Illuminati type mindset, any get rich quick schemes, looking for clientele for the business. I think if our brethren are diligent in asking the right questions and spending time with that candidate, I don't see how we can go wrong. I'm sure, we've let some men in that probably should not have been let in. You're going to get that for any organization, but they eventually find their way out. Um, have we lost some men that probably should have stayed? I'm sure we have, but that's on us. And we need to keep those guys here. I think a lot of it's based on why have they joined? And our lodge offer that man what he's looking for. But I also think lodges cannot be afraid to say that's not something that our lodge does, or that um, uh, that's not our personality, but the lodge down the road does. And I think you'd be a great fit there because, we feel you're the right guy for masonry. So don't be afraid to refer him to another lodge where that personality. So just like some people their occupation is law enforcement and they prefer to be with people who are law enforcement based, let them go to that lodge. I think on the whole, all we should care about is having the right man in masonry, not necessarily my lodge or your lodge, but you want him in the craft.
And the other kind of broader point about attracting men to Freemasonry is, to what extent I feel, and one concern I have is that the focus sometimes the focus is too much on, when we talk about attracting people and men to the craft, it's the implication is, seeking membership, um, as opposed to attracting people to the craft, attracting men to the craft, in the sense of having people uh, recognize the valuable role that a Masonic temple and lodge can play in the community. And even if they don't necessarily become a member, they recognize its value, and its importance. So even something like this podcast, for example, obviously I would hope that this would be of interest to Freemasons, but I believe that, there are several episodes which could be of interest to anybody, because we discuss things that, Freemasonry teaches things that are universal, and something like this podcast and whatever it may be, it can benefit the community as a whole, even non-members. I think everybody in a city is better off if that city has a Masonic temple in it that is strong and growing. Even I had a podcast not that long ago about the connections that Freemasons make with local small businesses who help them, they cater the food. We had a brewery on who, had an event with the Masonic Lodge that was really able to help his business during a COVID shutdown and help keep it afloat.
Nice.
So it just, sometimes perhaps, I don't know what your thoughts are, this sometimes we have this idea that we need to reach out for the purpose of membership, as opposed to really to reach out for the purpose of um, just creating partnerships in the larger community, and growing the recognition of the value of the craft, even if someone is not a member.
I don't think we need to get out there just with the hopes of getting more members. I think we should be out there because, helping a local business or a soup kitchen is the right thing to do. Plain and simple, it's the right thing to do. If we get a good candidate out of it, fantastic. But either way, it's a win-win situation if we get a candidate. If we don't get a candidate, you still win because you still gone out and do what's right to help whom needs that help, whether it's the people on the street, uh, getting warm, or highway cleanups or Masonic chips. I don't think we need to go out and look for membership. I think we're going to attract membership naturally.
There's a quote about that. I can't think of how it goes exactly, but about um, don't focus on other people, focus on making yourself as good as you can be, and helping people as much as you can, and then the people will follow, or the whatever it is you're looking for, right? If you focus on money, you'll never get it, but if you focus on a skill set, the money will follow the skill set. If you focus on
Right.
being helpful to the community, the people will follow. But if you focus on membership, that can be self-defeating, because then people start to feel like it's just, you're just trying to get members as opposed to trying to better the community.
Right. I don't think we need to do a membership drive if that's what you're referring to. No.
Yeah, no, I guess it's just the question of again, where we focus our efforts as a craft. And one thing is, and I think you touched on it perfectly, not focusing so much on membership, increasing membership, as we focus on just being the best Masons we can be, and the membership, the people will find us, kind of thing.
That's
The
right.
people will recognize it and find it.
I think naturally the good people will see what we do. They'll look at what we do. They'll ask us why we're doing it and ask us who we are. And then from there, if they are also a good person, a good man, he's going to make further inquiries and start the ball rolling.
What would you say? How would you define? And I recognize that every entered apprentice is asked this on his road to moving up the degrees. So I'm not looking for a ritual answer, obviously, but just in your mind, how would you define a Freemason?
I would define a Freemason as a man who has looked within himself, has found deficits, and is looking to improve those deficits and hopefully to spread or teach another fellow man about himself, share his experience and how it has changed him. And hopefully another man will look at that and say, I want some of that. How can I get there as well?
Do you think that that is or how much of Freemasonry would you describe as a skills-based endeavor versus a membership kind of qualification? So I can, for example, join a boxing gym, but having the membership in the gym wouldn't make me a boxer. It would be the extent to which I'm at the gym and training and practicing.
Means you pay dues.
Yeah, I pay my dues, but that doesn't make me a boxer. As I would discover, if I ever tried to go in the ring and without any training. So the process of recognizing those deficits and then attempting to improve them and encouraging others to improve within themselves their deficits, how much of that is a skills-based endeavor that requires, attendance and work versus, is that the type of thing that can be done on one's own?
I think skill sets will come. I find that a lot of masonry is lead by example. Just for example, if you are, say, the senior deacon in your lodge and you are watching the junior warden's lecture, because all of a sudden you're paying attention and it's like, I need to do that next year. So I'm going to watch this guy, see how he does it. Or if you have, I'm partial to this, you have the grand junior warden degree team come to your lodge and you're going to watch these guys because, being the grand junior warden, they're kind of expected to be, know, I'm going to use the term loosely. I'm not trying to, we'll say, be a rock star, if you will, in the junior warden's lecture, and because they're held to much higher um, level of expectation, and they're going to watch and see what they do, how they do it, or even someone in your district who has a reputation who's doing the same thing, and you are going to gravitate to that man and say, "How do you do that? What, watch me next time and tell me where I can improve." So I think looking for that self-improvement, I think we gravitate that naturally. If you really don't care about something, you're going to find something else.
I really like also that you brought up the senior deacon. Um, in my humble opinion, the most so if you ask a brand new Mason, what's the most important office in a lodge, he'd probably say the worshipful master. If you ask a more experienced Mason, the most important office in the lodge, he'd probably say secretary. And probably the most experienced would say maybe treasurer, because that is a very important role that sometimes gets overlooked. But I think the deacons might actually be the most important officers in a lodge because they really do set the tone for a degree and for a candidate. Not explaining what they do because this is open to the public, but I've told more than a few deacons, before degrees, just not to take for granted the responsibility that they have, because a calm, collected deacon, you see that transfer to a candidate and the way the candidate goes through a degree. And it's I always tell them, it's a privilege to get the chance to lead somebody metaphorically through the craft, and not to take that for granted. I really think the deacon's position is something that gets overlooked, and hopefully the deacons do, as you said, look to the senior officers for an example of how to be in their office and how to advance to the next one.
I would say the most important officer would be the junior steward. Reason for that, because he is brand new. He is going to be a sponge of information. He is going to be looking all over. He's going to be overwhelmed at first. It's going to take him a few months to find his footing, and then he's going to start asking questions. And I think in his mind at that time, he starts formulating where he's going to be in what year and what he has to do next. So I think having those inquisitive minds at all times at the very junior officer stage is very valuable. That's where the training begins, is at the junior steward level. You spark that interest then, you are going to have a fantastic officers throughout his career, his Masonic career into the East.
How important is it for a senior officer, past master, to take the time to answer those questions that a junior steward will have? Or I suppose any newer Mason, but as you said, especially in the case of a junior steward, he's brand new, he's looking around. The importance of making the time to be there and answer the questions of a junior officer and kind of help guide him along the journey.
I think whether it be past master, works master, anybody who's a senior officer or a senior, I think it's absolutely a necessity that he sit near or be at this man's beck and call, because any of those questions you answer openly, honestly, and correctly, you're setting that man for life. You're setting him for life. So, yes, I think it's absolutely a necessity. Those past masters make themselves available because they are your lodge's future. If you have junior officers who are not engaged, your lodge won't be engaged.
What do you mean by setting him up for life? A lot of
Sonically,
people. Is it necessarily Masonically, or are there lessons that can be learned within a Masonic lodge that can be actually applied to one's life?
well, I would equate the fact that if you see someone in a leadership role and he truly leads you, whether it be by example or in word, but that you voluntarily follow this man or woman, if it's in your personal life, and you learn to respect them for what they do, and you will keep following that person because you respect them. They spend time with you, they answer your questions correctly, and they steer you in the right direction. Masonically, it's the same thing. If you have a past master who won't give you the time of day, or eventually you're going to lose interest, you're going to leave. Occupational wise, same thing. Eventually you're going to quit your job because you don't like your boss. You're going to go find another job somewhere else. And I think Masonically, you have the same thing. If you're not encouraged by the senior officers in the lodge, you're going to lose interest. You're going to go somewhere else, whether to a different lodge, or you may leave the craft entirely. So I think the past master, yeah, he's left east. He doesn't have those responsibilities, but I think he has different responsibilities that are just as important.
And the question of responsibilities is an interesting one. What are the how would you define somebody's responsibility to the craft? We touched on it a little before, the idea of a quote unquote dues paying member, right? You have members who they pay dues, but they never attend, or even as an officer, they may never attend or very rarely attend. um, to what extent would you say, what are the responsibilities a Mason has to his lodge? Is it just a matter of, as long as he pays his dues, that he can, anything else is extra? Or do you think that there could be or should be responsibilities as to things like attendance, um, ritual work, things of that nature?
So first, yes, it's a voluntary organization, so you cannot dictate responsibilities. For me personally, I look as my responsibility as a pastor master in my lodge as someone who's going to guide those young members. I've had a couple of three really fantastic mentors, and I think without those men helping me out, I wouldn't be where I'm hopefully going to go now, or I wouldn't have done what I've done for the last number of years in masonry. So I look as my responsibility to help these other young masons. As a whole, I would hope that other past masters would take on the responsibility which is bestowed upon them as a young mason to help someone else as well. Well, at least one mason, help get them going.
So the voluntary nature of the craft, right? That is a thing I've struggled with the most in my Masonic journey. Or the idea of not being able to dictate responsibilities the way other areas of one's life is, because um, I can, I haven't missed a meeting in however many years or whatever. I'm regularly attending and I did my work, but so often you see brothers who they join or they attend a few meetings and then they miss, and even if they're officers. And the challenge of trying to facilitate and manage a lodge under those circumstances, um, I guess that's always been my struggle. Is at what point does a lodge, or do you think there's ever a point where a lodge has the right to, say to a brother, like, we have expectations as to your attendance, or we have expectations as to your work, even if it's a matter of like at the officer level. So maybe, a brother shouldn't be this officer because he's not attending or whatever it is. Or is it because it's a voluntary organization, it's just reliant on the lodge to foster and create goodwill and just to encourage members to attend?
Um, I think it's very important that an officer make that a personal obligation after, his family and work, of course. But I think once you become an officer or once you seek to be an officer, I think that's your voluntary way of saying, yes, I am going to, make this a priority in my life, number 3 or number 4, not number 10. And I'm going to give you my all. And if you cannot take on those obligations, I think you should step back and, come back a few years later, say, maybe when your kids grow a little older and, you can take that 2 or 3 nights a month and uh, move on with that. So I think if you're going to take on that role, I think you should look at it seriously. And as I said before, like the junior steward, for example, yes, he's a very important officer, but I think that's also very important for the members to look at him and say, you know, yes, he's showing great interest. He's he's doing all the right things, or we've only seen him once now as the last worship master's installation, and maybe he's not going to work out. So maybe you need to have that chat with him and say, maybe senior steward's not your place right now. Let's look at you again in a few years. So
And I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Because a concern I have is, seeing very often brothers moving through the chairs who perhaps aren't necessarily ready for the chair, or in some cases even wanting the chair. They're just moved up because there's a space to fill and it needs to be filled. Um, yeah, so I guess what would you say? I guess how would you balance out these different things, or what advice would you have for lodges trying to, looking at officer lineups and considering moving people up who may not be either ready or willing, or a combination thereof?
So I look at the junior steward as being an 8-year interview, or he's becoming worse mess. So the lodge members can look at this man and say, yes, we want him to lead our lodge in 8 years. And he's going to be looked at all throughout his career within those officers' chairs. So, sorry, I've gone off track.
No, no, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Junior steward is an 8-year job interview for the lodge. I like that analogy.
But again, if he's not working out, I think the lodge needs to step up and, leave the chair empty if they must, and take that hit, or make sure you have one or two past masters or three to step in and, take that appointment for a year. Let everybody else know that, we want to be a successful lodge. We want our officers to stand tall and be successful. And if we just keep pushing people through, in some cases, people push through because they, they can't say no for whatever their personal reasons are, or they don't know how to say no. And they're just being pushed, push, push. And then the lodge wonders why, once you get senior years or senior chairs, why he's not working out for the lodge. So I think sometimes that's the member's fault. So I think it's a two-way street. If you're not ready, don't do it. Or if you think someone is not ready, don't push them through.
Now, moving back on to yourself in particular, um, tell us a little bit about your. I know you mentioned you're a member of three lodges, but we don't have that much time. So tell us a bit about your mother lodge, kind of your Masonic journey thus far.
Okay, my mother lodge is St. Mark's Lodge 94 in St. Thomas District. Um, it's it originated as a farmer's lodge and a seafaring lodge back in the 1800s, where because it's originated in Port Stanley, so there was a lot of fishing going on and moving back and forth to Cleveland, and so a lot of ship's captains and workmates. Um, but I'm the first in my family to be a Mason that I'm aware of. I have a great great uncle somewhere that was, apparently, and so I got in, and I I don't know, I kind of gravitated to it personally. I joined later in life, and I'm a nosy little fella. So I started to nose around, see what else is out there within the craft I was really starting to enjoy with my lodge, because I had a lot of really good, a couple great sponsors. I had some really great mentors within the lodge, and I was always looking for something more, 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 more. And eventually, I found the college Freemasonry, and that's what really pushed me, in different directions. And I touched on earlier where I got to meet all kinds of people throughout the jurisdiction. Um, from there, craft lodge wise, after I was a portion master, I saw the election and was elected Grand Junior Warden, and that really let me to travel throughout the province as much as I could, and like, right, anywhere from Ottawa all the way down to your lodge when I was Grand Junior Warden. So my eyes really widened. And from the time when I was started running for Grand Junior Warden through that year and onwards, I've met a lot of other men, brethren, whether he's an apprentice or past Grand Master. A lot of these guys have taught me a lot about what's going on, to really look around, to appreciate what's out there, appreciate the different personalities and lodges. And I've loved it ever since. And I feel it's time for me to give back. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to do, is to give back a little bit more.
I remember going to, I don't know if it was your lodge or not, but I taking a trip to Port Stanley for
Mhm.
a fish fry night.
Yep,
Can't
I was
remember when.
junior warden.
There you go. It was a great time. I very much enjoyed it. I remember the lodge room was packed because it's a smaller lodge room. So I remember that. It was a great trip. Fun time. We got back like
You
Tuesday.
were sitting right in front of the junior warden's chair. I looked at you and said, "How'd you get up here?"
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
That was me.
It was Paul Rogers who carried the chair up. It was a great time. Just another example of the benefit of traveling, and
Yep.
another example of a fun night and why it's really important to travel as much as you can. Uh,
But I think that actually that year, seeing you there from traveling 2 hours away is what it almost starstruck me. Because I mean, I'm used to seeing people from all over St. Thomas District. A few people from London came down for our official visit, but someone coming from Windsor. I mean, that's a two and a quarter hour drive, and I thought, is our fish that great? I mean, we're just right on the lake too.
well, first, yes,
We eat the same fish.
yes, it was great. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the water's a little bit different around Port Stanley, but it was delicious fish.
Or was it the
Um,
free perch? Oh
was
no, that was the year we first started charging.
oh well. In that case, it was still worth the cost. I remember it was a good trip, but you say that. I mean, it's 2.5 hours. The interview yesterday. I talked about an all-night trip to Chicago to visit a lodge. Um, there were other professions, other areas of life where, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 hour trips are not uncommon. I think of the world of professional wrestling, who knows, stand-up comedy, music, arts, all these things, um, it's common to travel very long distances for an event. Uh, So yeah, so any Masons watching this, you know, don't be fucking lazy. Get on the road and drive, and if you have to drive a few hours, it's worth it. You get delicious fish. There's no reason to limit yourself to visitations, or at the very least, don't be lazy and visit another lodge in your district at a minimum, right? Like it's in the same building half the time. Just show up on another night. Don't be lazy.
You're gonna have a good time regardless of where you go anyway. So
Yeah, you will for sure. You'll have a great time. You meet new people. Uh, yeah, no, I know. As Masons, we're not supposed to say don't be lazy, and we're supposed to say we understand that you're busy, but I don't always understand that. Sometimes I think it's worth it to, even if you're tired, to get out on the road and go visit another jurisdiction.
yeah, great time. I mean, and if you go to the lodge, you can see a degree. I mean, it can be something just as simple as how they how they ballot. You look at how they ballot. I mean, it observes all the protocols, but it's they do it just a little bit differently. Like I like that. That is sharp. I like to take that back to my lodge and see if the guys will incorporate that in the way we do it. So you learn something different. Something that's 3, 4, 5, 6 districts away. Go for it. Take the night. Take the day off work.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I've taken many days off work, many sick days, whatever it is. There's ways to make it work. There's ways to make it work.
Yep.
And now, you don't even need to wear pants to visit another lodge. You just show up on your computer, just so long as you got a shirt and not even a tie. Usually, you can just wear whatever you want. How many times do you get to visit a lodge without pants? For heaven's
Yeah.
sake.
Just don't stand up. Yes.
Yeah, well, don't stand up, but stay sitting. But not a problem for me. Uh, Speaking of the not wearing pants and
Yes, I'm
the
wearing pants.
it's good. I'm not going to say whether I am or not. I'll let the audience take a guess. But speaking of the virtual world, we mentioned at the start, Grand Lodge is virtual this year. It is another example of uncharted territories. How do you think that it will go? Have you been in discussions with the most worshipful Grand Master and the administrative side about just the challenges, but also the benefits of going online and administering this this process?
Um, I'm not part of the discussion as to how it's going to be administered. I know as much as you do as to the communiques that come out from the Grand Master and the Grand Secretary. But if you read the communiques a few times over, you can tell that they've really, really thought this out. They've tried to cover all the bases, try to answer every possible question out there to deal with this. Um, I think no matter how well prepared they are, there still might be a hiccup out there because it's the first time for everybody. Maybe someone's access is going to go haywire for a day or two, and it just happened during the elections, or you know, it's going to be technical, whatever it is that may or may not go wrong. But I think whatever lessons we learn from this year will help create something better for next year. So, and also, I mean, if you really think about that, this was kind of rushed. Like we didn't have the option of spending 3, 4, 5 years to plan this out or to really look at all other areas that vote electronically, whether it's a municipality or otherwise. But I know of the men who are organizing this, they are uh, dedicated, dedicated, dedicated. They want to make sure this goes with as little problem as possible. So I would just say go with the flow, follow the instructions as close as possible, and I think it's going to be just fine.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. Certainly, Grand Lodge has done a great job of communicating with. I'm secretary of Harmony Lodge. They've done a great job of communicating with secretaries and providing the information. Um, so, as secretary, I will say on behalf of all secretaries in Ontario, to all members in Ontario, read the shit we send you, please, because it's got all the information you need. We're forwarding it from Grand Lodge, so yeah, check out the attachments, check your email, check your junk folders. Because even myself, I don't know why, but on a couple of occasions, Grand Lodge communiques have ended up in the junk folder by whatever algorithm it is that Outlook decides to shuffle them there. So just make sure, yeah, from the secretary's perspective, make sure you're checking email regularly, and then members, same thing, because there is some really good information coming from Grand Lodge.
As a fellow secretary, you should also check the Grand Lodge website on a regular basis under the recent tab. And whatever goes out ends up there usually within 24 to 48 hours. So that's another great source of information. So use that Grand Lodge website.
Yes, I concur completely. That is another terrific, terrific resource for everybody, secretaries and otherwise. Any Mason is going to benefit from the Grand Lodge website.
Including students for the College of Freemasonry.
Sorry?
Including the students for the College of Freemasonry. Use that website.
We'll talk a bit about that then. We'll end with that. Talk a bit about the College of Freemasonry. I've had several brothers who have been involved with it in various ways on the podcast, but I've yet to really discuss it in detail. So throw a quick pitch because it's something definitely worth a Mason's time.
Okay. The College of Freemasonry is an alternate manner of education. So one education, you hear lectures, you have your mentors telling you things, showing you things. The College of Freemasonry fills a different gap. It fills an academic gap on all, well, I'm not going to say all, but virtually every area of Masonic study. Whether it's, benevolence, how we're perceived Masonically in the public, justice. A lot of people don't know that there's a justice system within Masonry. Leadership, communication, officer training, protocol and etiquette, the district. history, philosophy and symbolism, the administration of Grand Lodge. So all these things are out there that you did not know. Or you may have a few brethren in your lodge who are specialists, say they're historical specialists. So you're going to learn a lot of history. Maybe some of your lodge has never taken on a Grand Lodge role. Well, yeah, there's a lot of do's and don'ts there. There's a lot of rules Grand Lodge officers have to follow. Ask your DD and your district secretary. Even you as a secretary, you know there's a lot of rules and regs that you need to follow. And there's probably others that you're not even aware of. They're just done for you. So these are things that are covered under the College of Freemasonry. We've taken a lot, it works on a modular system. It's done at your own pace. It uses books that are available either through Grand Lodge or a few select suppliers. We've taken some of those modules and we've grouped them together to create a specific course of study. Example, if you want to become DDGM or run for the board of general purposes, you need to take the past master's course, which is a conglomeration of 6 specific modules. You take those 6, then you're eligible to run for DDGM or for the board of general purposes. If you want to become worship master of your lodge, or if you want to find out if a brother is going to serve your lodge well, we have 8 modules we would recommend for that man to take to become a worship master. The past masters of your lodge, they have to examine the newly elected or the master-elect is to decide whether he can lead your lodge. You take these modules, and I would say with high confidence that he will be able to answer all those questions put forward by those past masters, both administratively and ritual. Sorry, the ritual part's taken care of in the lodge, not by the college. But he's going to have a firm understanding of what's going on around him. Some are just for interest. We have one for the district secretary. He doesn't have to take it, but if he has a basic understanding of what's going to be expected of him, then he can go into his new role with better confidence. We have the FCF course, where the arts and sciences, which gets you your FCF, which takes up 17 modules. Yeah, it's a big course of study, but it's well worth it. And that's the course I took when I was senior deacon, and that's when my world really started opening up. Oh,
I will leave a link in the description to the College of Freemasonry. So if anybody wants to check out the website, check out the description. Well worth your time. With that, it was, Worshipful Sir, a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I wish you the best of luck in your candidacy, and I look forward to, I guess, virtually seeing you at Grand Lodge this year. I can't promise I'll have pants on, but I'm still looking forward to attending.
I'm not looking, but Cameron, it's always a pleasure to chat with you, brother. Thank you for having me.